Ewan McGregor is the leading British actor of his generation. His work with the director Danny Boyle on Trainspotting and Shallow Grave, both set here in Scotland, established him as a Class A movie star. Since then, he's appeared in blockbusters like Star Wars and Moulin Rouge. In this film, we've spoken to many of his friends and closest collaborators and looked at the impact of his identity as a modern Scot committed to British independent film. To do it, we followed him around Cannes in New York as he opened 2 new movies, giving up to 80 interviews in a single day. Ewan McGregor was born in Crieff in Scotland in 1971. He's now one of the most famous faces in the world.
I love success. I like being successful because it's a mark of my work. But I wasn't driven towards being famous, and I'm glad that's the case. Because you can be satisfied with success. I don't think you'll ever be satisfied with fame, because you'll never really be famous enough, you know. I don't think you wake up in the morning and go, I'm really famous now. Fantastic.
Ewan McGregor opened his latest film, Young Adam, at the Cannes Film Festival in May. He's pursued at all times by adoring fans, television crews and paparazzi, and this time by us. It's all a far cry from his roots.
You can wake up dying to get to work, and you can come home from work that day feeling satisfied that you did your best job, and those are the happy moments, you know. My goal is to do exactly what I'm doing now. You know, if it remains like this, and I've got choice, and I can just carry on making films big and small like I'm doing now, that's all I want out of life, really, and because it satisfies me, you know. And if I'm trying to be the highest paid or biggest, you know, you never get there, really. And if you do, you've had to compromise your work on the way, I think, because you have to make choices. You have to do the action flick to get there, you know. You have to do this, because people have told me in America, if you have to do this, and I think, I don't fucking have to do anything I don't want to do. So I haven't.
Young Adam is a bold new Scottish film based on a novel by Alexander Trocchi.
Stark naked she was. I reckon she must have fallen in. If somebody pushed her, there'd be more marks in the body.
Young Adam is a romantic tragedy set in industrial Scotland in the 1950s. It's basically about a guy who's a drifter who works as a deckhand on a barge, and him and his boss discover a naked woman's body in the water, and this sets in motion a chain of events. Joe's character is having an affair with his boss's wife.
Where's Les?
He's found someone to play darts with. He'll be at least an hour.
As we get to know him and the story a bit more, we realise that there's a relationship between him and the body in the water.
He's a character who's outside of the society of the time, outside of the morality of this time. He's a sort of changing character who gets drawn into a series of events through his immorality and his hedonistic ways. And it's very much like a character of today.
Would you like to go for a walk with me, Kathy?
Where to?
Over there.
It's significant that Ewan McGregor's next movie is going to be a film based on an Alexander Trocchi book. He was around in the 60s. He was a heroin addict. He didn't have a very happy life, but he wrote a few very good books, and he was sort of Scotland's only beat poet, really. I mean, that's the sort of sensibility he fitted into. So he was a beat only in Scotland, not in the States. The interesting thing, though, is that while there was this sort of cultural dearth around in Scotland at this time, and everybody was just listening to Moira Anderson and thanking God that the Bay City Rollers were rocking on the planet, there were these things going on. There was Alexander Trocchi around that nobody really seemed to want to own or know. I think the Scots were embarrassed, perhaps, by Trocchi, embarrassed by the idea of a sort of druggy, beatnik poet. But now, Scotland has finally sort of grown up enough to own all of this stuff and all of these people.
I think for me, being Scottish is It's all about an identity, and more than anything else, it's kind of where I'm from, but it's also a really important part of who I am. I don't have a religion, but I'm Scottish, you know. I'm not Jewish or I'm not Catholic, but I'm Scottish. I kind of see it that way. It's interesting that Trochy was a junkie, a heroin addict. And although in the book and our script, you know, Joe's neither a drinker or he doesn't take drugs, he's addicted to tobacco, it would seem. But I felt like it was the story of an addict. I think that was the story. The further we went on and the more Trochy I read, as we were making the film, the more I thought that this is what it was about. This is a film about addiction. And Joe's, you know, that search for something that will make him feel, something that will make him experience, and something that will make him change. I think that's how Joe uses sex in a way.
Ewan's obviously a very charismatic actor, and we immediately thought that he would be perfect for this anti-hero material because he can act as a foil to the darkness of the material. Ewan, obviously, when we got the script to him, he immediately got that, and that is obviously something that really appealed to him about the character and the part.
Working with David on this, it was like being let free, you know? It was like being given the chance to breathe. Because very often when you're acting, there's someone with a stopwatch at the sidelines, and when they call cut, you can see the whisper going through, and they go, could you speed it up a little bit? Because they've already decided that this scene's going to be 43 seconds long. And it's not, you know, it's more than that. But with David, you know, these scenes dictated how long they should be, and the writing dictated how the film felt and went together. You don't know how these scenes are going to play out until you get up and play them.
What have you done today while I was earning the money for us to eat?
I made some custard.
You did what?
I made some custard. The now famous, I'm delighted to say, custard scene was the most extraordinary scene to play. It starts off with a really small domestic argument and ends up in this violent sexual weird dance. And you approach it by, you kind of look to the scene, you go, fuck, this is one hell of a scene. Because the journey in that one scene is enormous, to go from an argument about not going to the supermarket to beating her with a stick and covering her in custard and taking her violently from behind. It's quite a leap, and you can only do it by playing it.
The Scots, again, are not very sexually bold people. I mean, there is a strong strain of repression in the Scots too. So this is a liberation. I
think the main appeal for me of the novel is that it explores a moral grey area. You know, it's a character. It's about a character who is an anti-hero, who is somebody who is not a good man, who's not necessarily a sympathetic person.
Have you been seeing anyone else?
It's your child, Joe.
That doesn't answer my question.
His name's Dan. He's a plumber. He's nice, but I'm not really interested in him. He's married anyway.
So that's why you sent it to mine.
It's the truth!
I have to get back to the barge.
Don't run away. We can sort this out together.
No, we can't. I'm not yours anymore.
That's not true. We were right. We were fearless.
Well, that was then. I have to go.
The story, you know, is really a sort of critique of justice and hypocrisy, and I guess the idea that a world of gossip and sort of newspaper frenzies can create crimes out of accident. Joe, the character played by Ewan, sort of finds out about all these things, you know, through the newspapers and through reports, until it all culminates in something where he is forced to decide whether to take action or not in order to save an innocent man.
And can you please describe for us the circumstances under which you found the body of the deceased?
We were waiting for a cargo of coal to be delivered. I saw the body floating by. With Joe.
Joe.
My mate.
I see. And was Miss Dingley dead when you fished her out of the water?
Oh, she was dead, all right.
Thank you. No further questions.
Hi, Ewan! Go in here.
When he's promoting a new film, McGregor gives hundreds of interviews. They're scheduled with military precision at so-called press junkets.
Have you seen Young Adam at all?
Well, I want to talk to you about that because...
Well, let's talk about it, because we haven't got long, so let's talk about the movie.
Okay, so, Young Adam. You really get busy with many women in this film.
Yeah.
So was that the real reason that you wanted to do it, or was it the script?
Oh, not at all. No, the script is extraordinary. I mean, it's incredible how people are just pull out the sex. We find out bits and bobs as we go along, but... Oh.
Hello.
Wait a minute.
Ewan, that's your next date?
Yeah, hang on.
I don't know, are you married, or... I don't want to start any trouble here.
That's all right, you wouldn't be the first to start trouble. I had the feeling after reading Young Adam that I had when I finished the film script of Trainspotting. I felt like I had to do... Can you fuck off just now? Sorry, you're right in my way. And, yeah, God, it's just so difficult to concentrate with all that. I think there's less to write about or something. I mean, I'm not. I haven't been personally involved with all my leading ladies, you know. It would be maybe somewhat glamorous if I had been, but the truth is that I haven't. And,
But how does it make you feel?
It doesn't make me feel anyway. It's just, it doesn't make me feel one way or the other. The idea of the celebrity that comes along, that goes along with it is, it gets easier to deal with as I get more, as it's clearer to me what it's all about, you know. This whole thing and the premieres and magazine covers and television shows are only about, they're only about selling the film, you know, and they're not really that interested in me, you know.
It must be weird seeing, you know, some headlines saying that Ewan McGregor is having an affair with Nicole Kidman or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it still baffles me that you even talk to me about it. I find as a human being, it's incredible that you even bring it up. Yeah. I do, and especially in a room where you're all writing stuff that's going to go down. I mean, I had people basically asking me if I fucked Nicole Kidman. I'm a married man. Well, not so long. You make that face, but that's exactly what you're doing now. No, you are. You're challenging me to it now. And it's extraordinary to me that you have the gall to do that to a complete and total stranger, as I am to you. You don't know anything about me. And yet you sit there and you talk to me openly, knowing that I'm a married man, and you say, well, it must be terrible for your wife, but you're talking about it in the same breath.
How it feels. I mean...
Well, it's...
Shall we talk about something else?
His appeal to me is that he's a movie star who's not a movie star. I mean, he's a film star to his public, but to his professional colleagues, he's just another collaborator. And that was his reputation to me, and the reason I'm sure that he came to join our film, that he wanted to be like that. So I think that's a great quality that he has. And he doesn't seem to be somehow he's avoided the celebrity culture for the pure celebrity culture. He has become a famous actor and a film star because he's been so impressive in his films, rather than any sort of antics of celebrity.
They're such charmmongers, aren't they? Who's that arse in the back? Fuck you! Who's the director? David, come on then. Come in the middle. There we are!
This is a good story. When we were making this film, Strachey was writing about this bullshit morality, society's imposed morals. And I came off set one day and I got back to my trailer and I was reading a newspaper, and in it, there was a report about a policeman, a gay policeman, who'd admitted to smoking a joint once or something, and he was being torn to ribbons in the media. And I sat there and I looked and I thought, absolutely nothing has changed. Here's the same bullshit morals that Strachey was fighting against in front of my eyes in a 2002 newspaper, you know? Same deal. This tabloid beige world they'd like us all to live in. And the second you set a toe out of that bullshit normality, you end up with the tabloids going, you know, that horrible tutting noise that your old auntie makes. My old auntie doesn't, but some people's do. I was dumbfounded by the lack of support for this movie financially from Britain. To not be supported by the British film industry was astonishing to me. And I think what we're good at, you know, if anything, is making diverse stuff, different stuff.
Shallow Grave was a landmark in independent British cinema. It was directed by the Mancunian Danny Boyle, a graduate of the National Theatre, produced by Andrew MacDonald, and written by fellow Scot John Hodge.
Well, are you comfortable, Cameron? Yes, thanks. You seen the flat? Yes. And you like it? Yes, it's great. Yes, it is, isn't it? And we all like it. The room's nice too, don't you think? Yes. Spacious, bright, well-appointed, all that sort of stuff. All that sort of crap. Well, yes. Yes, so tell me, Cameron, just tell me, because I'd like to know, what on earth could make you think we'd want to share a flat like this with someone like you?
I met Danny and Andrew and John for the first time in a kind of scary casting. They all seemed slightly kind of cool, you know, the three of them. But the script was phenomenal. I mean, I thought it was really fantastic and fun. But I don't really I certainly wasn't experienced enough to know quite what we were doing. And when I remember seeing Shallow Grave for the first time, being blown away and not having realised that that's really what we were doing.
Just a few questions. I'd like to ask you about your hobbies.
Why do you want a room here?
Do you smoke? Now, when you sacrifice a goat and you rip its heart out with your bare hands, do you then summon hellfire?
It's a fairly straightforward question. Either you're divorced or you're not.
It's funny, actually, because a lot of people say that we discovered Ewan, but we didn't really. I mean, he was an actor. He'd been on television, and he'd done quite a bit of work by the time we just saw him for. We auditioned him for Shallow Grave.
And when we met him, the best thing I liked about him was he was Scottish, and this was a film set in Scotland, and at that time we'd cast Kerry Fox, who was a New Zealander, and I really wanted there to be Scottish people in it, and as you know, we ended up with one, so that was quite good. And he just had this sort of winning personality, you know. And when we all saw that smile that he does, I just could imagine him as Alex.
Ewan brought to Shallow Grave, he brought sort of likeability combined with menace. Shallow Grave dealt with the subject of friendship and greed and how one can suffer on account of the other.
No. Just think about it.
No.
Come on, David.
No.
Juliet.
No, Alex,
It's what?
unfeasible.
Shallow Grave concentrated on the people who'd got into the Thatcherite loop and were in the yuppie loop, and they had their lovely big flat, you know, and they were playing the game that most Scots were resisting. The funny thing about what happened in Scotland was that Thatcherism really did kickstart a much more positive Scottish identity. It was this final humiliation that really made people cut away and do something different and turn into their own resources and look outward again. I think the darkness of the film is all really about these people cutting away from their cultural roots in a not very satisfying way and finding themselves only with each other and not liking each other very much at all, because they were all conducting a sort of betrayal really by sort of going down that yuppie sort of route that, you know, all decent Scots despised at that time.
Cameron! Cameron, come on over here! Come on! What? Nothing. We thought you were someone else. Good luck!
I didn't set out to write a film about Scottishness, and I don't think we set out to make one, but I think there is something in Shallow Grave which is in the sort of tradition of certain sort of Gothic violence within Scottish literature. I think of something like The House with the Green Shutters was always a very strong influence on me. And I think there's just a hint of that in the film.
Everybody started together. I think that's undeniably the case, that we saw each other's strengths and weaknesses firsthand before we were experienced anything else. I think that great belief that John Hodge writes best in a sort of Scottish vernacular, and that Ewan doing John Hodge being directed by Danny, there is something that is just really perfect about it.
The biggest attraction about Shallow Grave for me was the fact that I was being offered a movie. I mean, really, that's what I lucked out. And it worked out for all of us because it led to Trainspotting, which was an even more important film for British cinema, I think.
Trainspotting depicts the drug and HIV epidemic affecting inner-city Glasgow and Edinburgh. It's based on Irvine Welsh's novel of the same name, published to outrage and acclaim in 1994.
It was a real watershed film for everybody involved in it, and I think for the whole Scottish nation as well. Not only did it manage to glamorise and make excitement out of the very worst of Scotland, it also, I think, really did show what was going on and what was underlying the epidemics and the poverty of spirit a great deal better than anything that did have flag waving to do.
I chose not to choose life. I chose something else. And the reasons? There are no reasons. Who needs reasons when you've got heroin?
It's the only film that my wife says changed me when I wasn't on set, you know. That's the only film I did that I kind of brought the character home, and I don't mean I was like being a junkie in the house, but that it was so all-encompassing for me that I couldn't see anything else, really, other than this film. I covered my apartment in Glasgow with images of junkies and needles, and I've never done that before. I'm not a method guy or anything, but everywhere I looked in my flat in Glasgow, there was an image of heroin abuse. And it's kind of dark, but it was fantastic. It got me right in there, you know.
When I first read Trainspotting, I was, as anyone who reads it would be, I was dazzled by the language, by the characters, and just the extreme situations that were being depicted. And that was a very attractive prospect, trying to take on the challenge of putting that on screen, you know, and finding ways to represent subjects and events that on the page were repulsive, but you couldn't take your eyes off them. We wanted to find a way to do that on the screen.
Yes, you fucking dancer!
We did have a rehearsal period, interesting rehearsal period. We did a lot of work on the drugs, obviously, which you're just going to do, you know, a lot of technical work on the drugs and how to take drugs and things like that, though you'd think none of that cast would need any advice on that. But we got involved with this group, Calton Athletic Drug Recovery Group, and they were a seriously big factor, I think, in the way that the film emerged, and the kind of the non-pitying stance it has towards drugs and a drug world, really.
Calton Athletic is a drug recovery group. We started off as a football team. We started off in 1985. When we started the football team, nobody gave us a hope in hell He lasted a couple of weeks, never mind a season. And probably everybody used to laugh at us. But that team that they used to laugh about went on to win the Scottish Cup, and Carlton Athletic went on to provide a range of services in the drug field in Scotland.
Taking Ewan down to meet those guys and to sit through one of their sessions where they talked about what they'd been through, and then they got involved in the film, and they came up and they were involved in rehearsals, showing us how to prepare all the gear and telling us all the anecdotes, and they're full of anecdotes, you know, they're like actors themselves, full of anecdotes, except not from the lovey world, from the druggy world.
Trainspotting never glamorised drugs. Nobody that watches Trainspotting's going to wake up in the morning and go, oh, it's a great day today, I think I'll go and inject heroin. It doesn't work that way. It's a progression. It's a natural progression. You start off on lighter drugs, just like I started. Before I knew it, I was lying in police cells every weekend, just a no-hoper. Do you know what I mean? No way out, just like I says, just no way out at all. You never see anybody come off drugs. I hadn't seen anybody come off drugs, do you know what I mean, in my community, until really I bumped into Davy Bryce's boy at Carlton Athletic.
I got a phone call from a man called Danny Boyle. He told me he was a director and he'd just finished a film called Shallow Grave. He asked us if he could come to meet us. He came to meet us, we spoke at great length, invited him to one of our recovery meetings. He brought a young man with him, and I thought the young man he brought with him was coming looking for help at Carlton Athletic. The young man was Ewan McGregor. He was just getting ready for the part, and there was me thinking there was somebody coming looking for help. That's how authentic Trainspotting was.
Well, I was terribly moved when I went to the Carlton Athletic meeting. I'd never been to anything like that before. And I went in with Danny on the night I arrived in Glasgow. I went to the production office at Will's Cigarette Factory where we shot the film, and from there me and Danny went along to this meeting for drug addicts in recovery, and I'd never seen anything like it. It was predominantly men in there, and hard men, you know, tough-looking guys who were all sitting around helping each other and speaking to each other in a very intimate and supporting way. And it was funny as well, which made sense to me of our script, because there was an enormous amount of humour in that room.
The downside of coming off junk was I knew I would need to mix with my friends again in a state of full consciousness. It was awful. They reminded me so much of myself I could hardly bear to look at them. Take Sick Boy, for instance. He came off junk at the same time as me, not because he wanted to, you understand, but just to annoy me.
I lost lots of weight for it. Danny wanted him to be, obviously, clearly very skinny, but I mean, in the book, he's covered in spots and boils, and he's got kind of disgusting ginger hair. And we didn't follow that exactly. I mean, I think if we were to put some of the scenes in that were in the novel, you know, not only you wouldn't be able to get people to see it, but you wouldn't be allowed to show it, you know. Because Irvin Welsh is spectacular, really shocking the hell out of you, you know.
Give me the gun. Give me the gun.
Do you see the beast? Have you got it in your sights?
Clear enough, Miss Moneypenny. This should present no significant problems.
I think they were all in the flush of kind of starting off their film careers, really, which is a good time to catch them. They're all willing and eager, and they were having a good time. They had a very, very good time. There's a lot of celebrating going on for no apparent reason, but the celebrating happened. I remember them turning up for the scene where they shoot the dog, and they'd been out all night. Ewan and Johnny had been out all night. I know they'd been out all night. They hadn't been to bed at all, because I was told that by the people who got them to set somehow. But of course, in that kind of ravaged world, you can get away with that look, you know. Now it'd be all sorts of people worrying about what they look like.
We'd go out on the weekends maybe a bit, but it wasn't a kind of druggy film or a boozy film at all. It was incredibly sharp and focused.
This is not natural, man. It's a great outdoors. It's fresh air!
Look, Tommy, we know you're getting a hard time off Lizzie, but there's really no need to take it out on us.
Doesn't it make you proud to be Scottish?
It's shite being Scottish! We're the lowest of the low! The scum of the fucking earth! The most wretched, miserable, servile, pathetic trash that was ever shot into civilization. Some people hate the English, I don't. They're just wankers. We, on the other hand, are colonised by wankers.
We wanted just to have a moment of sort of fresh air in the film where they get away from the urban landscape and they're kind of confronted with the outside world, as it were. You know, they can see beyond their immediate horizons and then they find they can't sort of cope and retreat back in. And there's also so much in Scottish television or Scottish film that has that sort of scenery obsession, and we just wanted to kind of knock that on the head or confront it. Really. So they look at the scenery and then Renton says, what's it worth?
Well, it's all in the book, that. And it's kind of massaged, manipulated by John Hodge, another Scotsman. And it's performed by Ewan McGregor, another Scotsman, and they really understand it. They didn't need any directing that day, any of them.
Would Sir care for a starter? Some garlic bread, perhaps? No, thank you. I'll proceed directly to the intravenous injection of hard drugs, please. As you wish, sir. As you wish.
I prepared myself I kept asking, there was a guy, Eamon, who was our drugs advisor on set from the Carlton Athletic Club, who'd been clean, I can't remember for how long, but a good many years when we worked with him, who gave us our cookery class and stuff. It was a very funny day when we all sat down at a long table and we all had a matchbox and a spoon and some powder and some citric acid and some matchsticks, and we were taught how to cook up a shot, you know, like the Generation Game or something. And he walked back and forth and said, yeah, more citric acid and less of that and more of this, and, you know, gave us marks out of 10 almost on how we cooked up our shot. And I kept asking him, I kept prying him about what it was like to withdraw from Smack.
I think there's a lot of baloney talked about preparing actors and, you know, and how do you do it and all those kind of things. I mean, you try and actually get good actors, get a good script, and you try and treat them with respect and kind of push them if they need to be pushed, and hope that you've hired people who actually have that, that the push is internal for them. They have that own ambition themselves to do it. And really you try and create the conditions in which they can work. If you get that with the people, then you've got time to stylistically kind of open the film up, you know, to work it in a different way. You know, if you've got automatic actors who can just turn it on for you like that.
I've never believed anything other than we didn't glamorise drugs in that movie. I think we showed a very accurate portrayal of what happens, a life on heroin, that it's a downhill spiral.
One of the reasons that Trainspotting is a successful film is it's a very, it's quite a flamboyant film in many ways. There's a lot of showing off. There's a lot of phenomenal actors blazing away in it, you know. And but I think I've come to realise with making some more films that the reason that it works is that it's Ewan's through line in it, really, emotionally, and that connects with people. And it's a weird through line as well, because again, I think people think the modernity of the film comes from its style, you know? But I think that his through line is a sort of numbness, really, which connects with the modern audience, really. There's no real redemption in the film.
Now, I've justified this to myself in all sorts of ways. It wasn't a big deal, just a minor betrayal, or we'd outgrown each other, you know, that sort of thing. But let's face it, I ripped them off, my so-called mates.
Ewan McGregor's work in Trainspotting thrust him into the world of mega-celebrity, and soon he was being offered leading roles in American films. Here he is in New York earlier this year, promoting his new movie with Renée Zellweger, a frothy 60s-style romantic comedy.
I find it mind-numbingly difficult to come up with the right to any response to some of the questions you're asked. And especially like we saw in New York, when it's just relentlessly, especially the television, where you've got 5 minutes each, they're necessarily going to ask you the same 3 questions. And after all day of that, it's almost impossible to open your mouth to speak, you know?
Where's the love song set us free? Too many people down, everything turning the wrong way round. And I don't know what love will be, but if we start dreaming now, Lord knows we never clear the cloud.
Were you aware when you started acting that so much of your time would be given to promotion?
It's not really. I mean, I can't remember the last time I did a big junket like this. I can't remember what it was for. Was it? For Moulin Rouge. So it's been a couple of years since I did this. So it's not, and it's only ever for like 2 or 3 days or at a time, you know, so it's fine. It's not demon about it. I mean, and this kind of thing's quite fun. Sometimes you're given a little challenge for during the show, you know. Like, aye, you have to slip in a word. I got monkey butt in the last one.
No, it was.
Monkey butt and geranium were my 2 words for the last interview.
Did you get the bed?
I got them both in, yeah.
Maybe it's just the very nature of television, the fact that it's so short. They don't get time to get in depth with their questions, and you don't get time to get in depth with your answers. And nor really are they interested. For television, they want a 1 minute line that sells the movie.
McGregor's last film with Danny Boyle and the Trainspotting team was A Life Less Ordinary with Cameron Diaz. Released in 1997, it was a flop and a critical disaster.
Everybody was really looking forward to A Life Less Ordinary. It was an important transitional film for Danny Boyle. It was the first time there was big money. It was the first time there was involvement from America. Now, America has always had a mythical place in the Scottish heart. So there was very much a feeling that this couldn't fail, that, you know, big budgets would make better films for Boyle, and everybody just sort of thought it was going to be fantastic. And then, of course, it came out, and A Life Less Ordinary was execrable, awful, just really terrible.
I particularly love it because it's the great unloved one, really, and there's always the one, the run to the litter. He's always the one that you love, you know, and well, we went to America. Everybody says we went to Hollywood. We didn't. We went to a far worse place, which is Utah, full of Mormons.
Next. Hello. I'd like to make a withdrawal.
I thought we agreed, no cliches.
Yeah, it was an attempt to do something with a very different tone, really.
Fill the bag.
I like this argument set in the US because the geography there makes certain narratives possible that I don't think feel possible in the UK, just because it's such a small country. The film didn't turn out quite as we wished. I would say that's a combination of features. Main problem is probably the script. I wasn't strict enough in discarding parts of the screenplay that I liked, but which were not clearly enough contributing to the story.
The interesting thing about it is that if they'd done what originally was planned and set it all in Scotland, it would have worked.
There was an expectation of what this trio of filmmakers were going to do next. Andrew, Danny and John. I was under the impression that after the success of Trainspotting, the most dangerous thing that they should have and could have done was to try and make an American romantic comedy. We were trying to, as British filmmakers, we're trying to beat them at their own game somehow. But I'm not sure if that was the case ultimately, or if it was an attempt just to break into Hollywood. I don't know.
What's wrong?
Celine, it's over.
The Trainspotting team's next project was The Beach, based on the novel by Alex Garland. But Leonardo DiCaprio was cast in the main role instead of Ewan McGregor. Still a sore point.
Well, what happened was, I guess, in short, was that we decided that this part could be played by an American and cast an American. It was a very, very difficult decision to make at the time, and is one that continually sort of, if you like, haunts us. It's also been the last time we worked with Ewan. And I think that the only sort of ironic thing that's come out of it, of course, is that he has gone on to such sort of brilliant and better things.
It's also unfortunate and badly dealt with, you know. And the events, it doesn't matter now, but it was all badly handled. And it wasn't ultimately anything to do with The Beach, you know. Whether I was in the film or not is irrelevant. What was relevant was the fact that we were all friends, and I believed in what we all stood for, and that wasn't looked after very well.
We went. I mean, you know, we went with Leonardo DiCaprio. Now, listen, they were both really, really good actors. You know, so it's not a question of. It wasn't a question of that. It's economic reasons, really. But I think we didn't handle it in the best way possible, really. And I think he should have been. I think we should have shown him a bit more respect, really.
Although his working relationship with the Trainspotting trio ended, McGregor's career continued to flourish, and he was offered a role as a 70s rock star in an American independent film, Velvet Goldmine, directed by Todd Haynes.
I've only done things that I really want to do in my gut, and they have tended to be, you know, very different things. And by going purely by the story and not being led by directors or budget or where the films are made, you will end up making all different kinds of films, if you're lucky like I am. It's really just about that, like reading a good book, going, fucking great, and I want to be in that. If your decision's being made for any other reason, it's proved to me that it's not going to work out as well, you know. So Velvet Goldmine was just extraordinary to read. It was about glam rock, you know, and about that time, and that's. I certainly wasn't thinking about it. It's a gay film. It was a glam rock film, as far as I was concerned, you know. I often forget that I'd shagged Christian Bale up the arse on the rooftop in King's Cross. It's quite a moment for both of us, I think.
Ewan was somebody I thought of for Kurt Wilde, probably before any specific actor for any role in this film. I wanted Ewan McGregor. I saw Ewan in Trainspotting, and like so many people, I just thought he was phenomenal.
Make a wish and see yourself on stage.
He was hot, completely sexy in that role in a really great, unusual way you hadn't seen in movies in a while.
I'd asked to do all my singing live, and because I wanted to be a rock star, I thought this would be the way for me to do it on film. So I'd kind of said, I'll do the film if you let me do all my singing live, and they'd said, great, you know. And then it came to 4 in the morning in a field near Pinewood Studios somewhere with 400 extras, and I had to go on and sing I Want to Be Your Dog live. And I thought, well, why did oh God, I've really done it now. So I think I got a bit drunk. I drank a lot of beer and whatever else, and went on stage and saw what happened. I mean, not out of control drunk, but I think just to, also it was an excuse to be a rock and roll star, you know, to do that.
See that cat? Well, I love
up her shoe. She got teeth.
The scene where Ewan bears all to the audience was really, truly one of the highlights of the production. In the script, it said Kurt bears his ass as it moons the audience at a certain point in the song or at the end of the song and then runs off. So Ewan McGregor goes out onto the stage and doesn't just moon the audience. He drops his pants, he shakes his goods, he bends over and spreads his ass in front of the entire crowd of extras, and they went crazy. I mean, it was the most amazing moment for all of us because he invented it on the spot.
I've always felt that I've done enough different things now to avoid being pigeonholed in one way or the other. And that's the way I'll continue. I mean, I don't want to end up playing one thing or the other because it would bore the pants off me, really.
I think he's amazing in Moulin Rouge, too. A film which I think takes a lot of the themes from Velvet Goldmine and paints them on a much bigger and a very impressive canvas.
You can tell everybody that this is your song. It may be quite simple, but now that it's done, hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind that I put down in words how wonderful life is. Now you're in the world.
I would hate to get stuck playing romantic leads, you know, and not get the edgy, dark parts.
This is your song.
Far more than Star Wars, it's really put my name on the map in America, and I'm now offered more leading roles here than I was before. So it's made a big difference for me.
Back in the UK, the writing, producing, directing team of Hodge, MacDonald and Boyle is trying to put together a sequel to Trainspotting. Like the original novel, it's set in the bars, streets and estates of Leith in Edinburgh.
Irvin has now given us porno, or given the world porno, and it has a much clearer narrative than Trainspotting did. Whereas Trainspotting was a whole set of different stories, and the challenge there was to try and bring it into one. Porno is a very clear story. The same characters back together, but they're engaged in the manufacture of a hardcore porn film.
I read it, and I didn't think it was as good as the Trainspotting novel. I liked it, and I liked finding out about where our characters are now, you know, 10 years later. And I took great pleasure out of that. I loved reading another Irvin Welsh book because of his ability to make me laugh and then make me want to throw up. And but ultimately, it's the same story. It's just the same thing again. And I don't think it moved me quite like the Trainspotting novel moved me. There were chapters in Trainspotting that were just beautiful, and I didn't think they were in porno.
If John can get those parts up again, because it's quite difficult to get those parts so that they really attract those actors, because we wouldn't want to do it with any different actors. We'd want to do it with all the same actors. We want to get them back together again and see what that dynamic itself would be very, very interesting, you know, to come back to. Obviously, there's a danger of sequelitis. You know, sequels are usually very disappointing, crushingly disappointing. You have to be aware of that. And I'm sure none of the actors will do it unless they feel really fired up by the way that we've managed to kind of create the script, you know.
The idea of taking the 4 surviving male characters and seeing what's happened to them 10 years later, I think I could, as a producer, I could put a sort of poster around a video cassette and I could go and ship them off. You know, people are really interested in that because those characters are very rare in British cinema. They're sort of, you know, mythical characters.
To go back to those characters when middle age starts to hurtle towards them is very interesting. And as I've said, the only problem I think is that they don't look 10 years older. When I saw Ewan a few months ago and he looked great, you know, they all look like they moisturise all the time, which is what I say, you know, which the actors do, of course, so they stay in that prime time. And we want them to look, you know, like middle age is suddenly creeping in the door, you know?
I would be reluctant to make a sequel to Trainspotting because I wouldn't like people to remember a poor sequel. I'd like people to remember a blistering fuck-off movie that we made before, you know? So we'd have to see. The truth is, I haven't read the script, and we'll see, I suppose.
Ewan McGregor has now worked with many of the world's leading directors, from Ridley Scott and George Lucas to Peter Greenaway and Tim Burton. He's even part of the Star Wars franchise, following in the footsteps of his uncle Dennis Lawson, a successful actor who also appeared in the original Star Wars.
He said to me when he was about 8 or 9, as I recall, very, very seriously, that he wanted to be an actor. And he never, from that point on, he never wavered from that goal.
Well, I know he said, you know, that from the time he was a little boy and he used to watch black and white movies, and he could imagine himself in those scenarios. And I think that's what is extraordinary. It allows him to live 100 different lives.
I definitely want to go back on the stage, probably next year, because I miss it, you know, and I love acting on a stage. Beautiful. And it's good for us as actors. It's so good. You learn a lot, and it puts you right back in the picture of what it is you're doing as an actor. It reminds you of everything you need to be reminded of. Directing, definitely. I've got something up my sleeve that I'm trying to, that I'm in the process of trying to get the rights to and what have you. And it would be a feature film, and it'd be terrifying, terrifying. So I want to do more of that, and then more acting, because I love that. I truly do what I love to do, you know? I'm very lucky.